Imagine a fortune so vast it could buy a town, a legacy so grand it promised immortality, but cursed with a price no one could outrun. Picture a grand plantation house in the heart of Georgia, its white columns gleaming under the 1892 sun, hiding a secret so sinister it would unravel a dynasty. What if the wealth you inherited didn't just change your life, it ended it? And what if the end came not with a scream, but with laughter? Unstoppable, unnatural, tearing through your throat until your last breath. Welcome to the macabre history of the Hargrove heirs, a family whose name once meant power, but now whispers dread. If you're watching this alone tonight, you might want to check your locks. This is a story that clings like damp moss to the bones of those who hear it. The Hargrove family wasn't just rich. They were a legend carved into the red clay of Georgia's low country. In the years after the Civil War, when the South was clawing its way back from ruin, Elias Hargrove built an empire from cotton, timber, and whispers of darker trades. His plantation, known as Blackthorn Manor, sprawled across thousands of acres near Savannah, its fields worked by freedmen and sharecroppers who spoke of the family in hushed tones. The Hargroves weren't just landowners. They were a dynasty, their name etched into church pews, bank ledgers, and the fearful glances of neighbors. But beneath the polished surface of their wealth, something festered. A secret so vile it seemed to poison the very air of Blackthorn. By 1892, when this story begins, the Hargrove sons were poised to inherit it all: the land, the gold, and the curse that would claim them one by one. What makes a family cursed? Is it the sins of the father, seeping like rot into the bloodline? Or is it something older, something woven into the earth itself, waiting for the right moment to strike? The Hargrove heirs didn't just die. They died laughing, each on their 30th birthday, as if the act of inheriting their fortune triggered a madness no doctor could explain. It began with Jonathan, the eldest, a man whose charm could light up Savannah's ballrooms. On the night he was to claim his share of the estate, laughter spilled from him. Not joy, but something twisted, relentless, a sound that chilled the guests and echoed through the manor's halls. By morning he was gone, his body cold, his face frozen in a grotesque grin. And he wouldn't be the last. One by one, the Hargrove sons followed, each meeting the same fate on the day they turned 30. Their laughter a death knell that shook the family to its core. This wasn't just a tragedy. It was a pattern, deliberate, inescapable. The townsfolk whispered of a curse, born from Elias Hargrove's shadowy dealings. Some said he'd crossed a conjure woman, a descendant of the enslaved who worked his fields, her vengeance woven into the family's blood. Others pointed to the land itself, claiming the plantation was built on unhallowed ground, where old rituals left scars in the soil. Doctors came, priests prayed, and detectives scoured the manor, but no answer could stop the laughter. By the time the last son faced his 30th birthday, the Hargrove name was synonymous with dread, and Blackthorn Manor stood half abandoned, its windows dark, its fields silent, except for the faint, mocking echo of laughter in the wind. Why does this story grip us? Because it's not just about death, it's about the terror of inevitability. The Hargrove sons weren't hunted by a killer or haunted by a ghost. They were betrayed by their own legacy, by the very wealth that promised them everything. It's a fear we all carry deep down. What if the things we cherish most, family, success, home, are the things that destroy us? This tale, rooted in the muggy heat of 1892 Georgia, feels alive even now, its echoes reported in the ruins of Blackthorn Manor as late as 2025. Hikers claim to hear giggles in the woods, sharp and unnatural, as if the curse still lingers, waiting for someone new to claim it. Let's set the stage. It's 1892, and Savannah is a city of contrasts. Opulent mansions line its squares, while the scars of war and slavery linger in the shadows. Blackthorn Manor sits on the outskirts, a sprawling estate surrounded by oak groves and marshes that hum with cicadas. Elias Hargrove, the patriarch, is a towering figure. His wealth built on cotton but rumored to come from less savory sources, smuggling perhaps, or deals with men who vanished after signing contracts. His wife, Abigail, was rarely seen, her frail form glimpsed only at church, her eyes hollow as if she carried a secret too heavy to speak. Their 4 sons, Jonathan, Thomas, Samuel, and young Caleb, were the pride of the county, each groomed to inherit a piece of the empire. But the locals knew something was wrong. Sharecroppers told of strange lights in the manor's windows, of laughter that wasn't human, drifting from the fields at midnight. The Hargrove fortune wasn't just money. It was a pact, or so the rumors went. Elias's rise was too swift, his enemies too quick to disappear. Old women in Savannah's market spoke of a conjure woman named Mavis, a healer, whose family once worked Blackthorn's fields. They said Elias wronged her, cheated her kin or worse, and her curse was no ordinary hex. It was said she wove it into the family's blood, tying their fate to the moment they claimed their inheritance. When Jonathan, the eldest, turned 30, the curse came alive. The night of his birthday, the manor was alive with celebration. Candlelight, music, the clink of glasses. But as the will was read, naming him heir, his laughter began. Soft at first, then wild, unstoppable. A sound that drove guests to flee. By dawn, he was dead. His body found in the library, his face locked in a rictus grin. No poison, no wounds. Just laughter that wouldn't stop. This story isn't just a ghost tale. It's a puzzle. One that baffled doctors, priests, and even the Pinkerton detectives hired to unravel it. Was it madness passed through the Hargrove blood like a disease? A toxin hidden in the manor's walls or the wine they drank? Or something older? Something tied to the land, to the bones buried beneath Blackthorn's fields? The Hargrove heirs story spread beyond Georgia, whispered in newspapers as far as Boston. Each death adding to the legend. By the time the last son faced his fate, the manor was a place of fear, avoided by all but the desperate or the curious. And yet, the questions remain, as sharp today as they were in 1892. What made them laugh? Why only the sons? And why does the echo of their laughter still haunt the ruins? This is the kind of story that sticks with you, that makes you glance at your own family tree and wonder what secrets it hides. It's why we're diving into the Hargrove heirs tonight, peeling back the layers of their cursed legacy over the next hour. We'll walk through the rise of their empire, the chilling pattern of their deaths, the desperate attempts to break the curse, and the mysteries that linger in Blackthorn's ruins. If this tale chills you, and I promise it will, hit that like button to let us know. And in the comments, tell us, where are you watching from? What time is it there? Is it late enough to hear the laughter in your own walls? Before we go deeper, a quick note. This channel thrives on stories like these, tales of families bound by darkness, secrets that refuse to stay buried. If you're new here, subscribe and ring the bell. We drop new horrors every week and you won't want to miss what's coming. For those who've been with us, you know we don't just tell stories. We unravel them piece by piece until the truth, or something close to it, stares back. The Hargrove heirs are just one chapter in our ledger of macabre histories. If you love this, check our playlist for more cursed bloodlines, like the triplets who sang their masters to ruin, or the midwives who delivered the damned. As we begin, picture Blackthorn Manor in 1892. The air is thick with jasmine and decay, the kind of heat that clings to your skin. The Hargrove sons are young, vibrant, unaware of the shadow creeping toward them. But the land knows, the trees know, and somewhere, in the marshes or the manor's shadowed halls, something is laughing, waiting for the next heir to claim his birthright. Let's step into their world, starting with the man who built it all, Elias Hargrove, whose ambition sowed the seeds of a curse that would outlive him. Stay with us. This is only the beginning. We're standing at the gates of Blackthorn Manor, 1892, Georgia, where the air hangs heavy with the scent of magnolias and something sharper, like the tang of secrets left to rot. The Hargrove family's empire was born here, in the red clay of the Low Country, a place where wealth grew as fast as the cotton in their fields, and where whispers of a curse began to take root. To understand the laughing deaths that claimed the Hargrove heirs, we need to unravel the man who built this dynasty, Elias Hargrove, a figure as towering as the manor's white columns and as shadowy as the marshes that cradled his land. His fortune was legendary, but so were the stories, tales of deals struck in darkness, of betrayals buried deep, and of a laughter that wasn't human, drifting from the fields at night. Let's step into the world of Blackthorn Manor, where every brick and every coin carried a price no one could pay. Elias Hargrove wasn't born rich, but he was born ruthless. The 1860s, as the Civil War tore Georgia apart, Elias saw opportunity where others saw ruin. A merchant's son with a gambler's nerve, he started small, running supplies past Union blockades, trading in whispers as much as goods. By 1870, he'd bought Blackthorn, a crumbling plantation abandoned by its Confederate owners. With freedmen and sharecroppers working the fields, he turned it into a cotton empire, his bales shipped as far as London. But locals swore Elias's wealth wasn't just from cotton. There were stories of late-night wagons rolling into Savannah's docks, crates that no one dared open, and men who met Elias in the marshes only to vanish by dawn. His ledger was clean, but his shadow was long, and Blackthorn Manor became a place of awe and fear. The manor itself was a marvel, a sprawling Greek revival masterpiece with 30 rooms, crystal chandeliers, and a ballroom that hosted Savannah's elite. Its oak-lined drive stretched a mile, flanked by moss-draped trees that seemed to whisper as you passed. But there was something wrong with Blackthorn. Sharecroppers spoke of strange lights flickering in the upper windows, even when the family was away. Maids claimed the mirrors reflected faces that weren't there. And at night, especially during the harvest moon, a low, chuckling sound drifted from the fields, not joyful but mocking, like someone watching from the shadows. Elias dismissed it as superstition, but his wife Abigail wasn't so sure. She was a quiet woman, her beauty faded by years of strain, her eyes always searching the horizon as if expecting something to come for her. Abigail Hargrove was a mystery in her own right. Born into a minor Savannah family, she married Elias at 19, a union more contract than romance. She bore him 4 sons, Jonathan, Thomas, Samuel, and Caleb, each a year apart, each a mirror of their father's ambition and their mother's haunted gaze. Abigail rarely left the manor, spending her days in the garden or the chapel, praying with a fervor that unsettled the staff. Some said she knew more than she let on, that she'd overheard Elias's deals in the study, or found papers she wasn't meant to see. Others whispered she'd visited Mavis, the conjure woman, begging for protection for her boys. Whatever the truth, Abigail's silence was a weight, and her sons grew up under it, unaware of the shadow creeping closer with every birthday. The Hargrove sons were the pride of Blackthorn, each groomed to carry the family name. Jonathan, the eldest, was a charmer, his smile disarming Savannah's debutantes and his wit winning over bankers. Thomas, the second, was the scholar, always buried in books, dreaming of a university named after him. Samuel, the third, was the wild one, riding horses through the marshes and gambling in Savannah's back rooms. Caleb, the youngest, was the artist, sketching the manor's oaks with a precision that unnerved his tutors. They were the future of the Hargrove legacy, destined to inherit millions, land, mills, and investments that stretched across the South. But the locals watched them with pity, not envy. By 1892, the whispers had grown louder. No Hargrove son would live past 30. Not once he claimed his share of the fortune. Those whispers weren't baseless. The trouble started years before. In the early days of Blackthorn, sharecroppers told of a night in 1875 when Elias argued with a woman in the fields, Mavis, the conjure woman, whose family had worked the land before the war. Some said Elias cheated her kin out of wages, others that he'd burned their cabins to clear more fields. Whatever the truth, Mavis left Blackthorn cursing Elias's name, her words sharp as a blade. Your blood will pay for what you took. By the time Jonathan turned 30, that curse seemed to come alive. The manor's staff noticed omens, mirrors cracking without cause, wine turning sour in the cellar, and that laughter, always that laughter, low and relentless, like a secret no one could keep. The community around Blackthorn wasn't blind to the strangeness. Savannah's newspapers printed cautious stories, calling the manor unlucky but avoiding details. Preachers warned their flocks to steer clear, citing ungodly influences. Yet Elias's wealth kept him untouchable. He donated to churches, funded schools, and hosted grand parties, his charisma smoothing over doubts. But the sharecroppers, The ones who worked the fields knew better. They spoke of Mavis's kin, scattered after the war. Some said to have practiced old rituals, gullah traditions mixed with something darker, tied to the marshes. They said the land itself was angry, that Blackthorn was built on a place where blood had been spilled long before Elias arrived. The oaks, they claimed, weren't just trees. They were witnesses, their roots tangled with secrets. By 1892, the stage was set for tragedy. Jonathan's 30th birthday was approaching, and Blackthorn buzzed with anticipation. The manor was decked in flowers, a feast planned for 100 guests. Politicians, bankers, even a senator from Atlanta. Elias had promised Jonathan his share of the fortune, a third of the estate, enough to make him one of Georgia's richest men. But Abigail was uneasy. She'd taken to wandering the manor at night, clutching a rosary, muttering prayers no one could hear. The staff noticed her pausing at mirrors, staring as if expecting to see something, or someone. Jonathan laughed it off, calling her too delicate for plantation life. He didn't know the laughter wasn't his to control. This was the world of the Hargroves, a family perched on the edge of ruin. Their wealth a glittering trap. The manor, with its polished floors and shadowed corners, was both palace and prison. The sons, raised to inherit an empire, were blind to the cost. And the curse, if it was a curse, waited patiently, its first strike just days away. What was it about Blackthorn that turned joy into horror? Was it Mavis's vengeance, her words sinking into the family's blood like poison? Or was it something older, something the land itself had held long before the Hargroves arrived? The answers, if they exist, lie in the days that followed, in the laughter that tore through Jonathan's throat, and the deaths that would haunt Blackthorn for generations. As we move forward, we'll follow Jonathan to his fateful birthday, where the curse, or whatever it was, made itself known. But for now, picture Blackthorn Manor in the twilight of 1892. The cicadas hum, the marshes glisten, and somewhere in the distance, a chuckle breaks the silence. Not human, not quite, but enough to make your skin crawl. If this story's already sinking its claws into you, drop a like to let us know. And in the comments, tell us, what would you do if your family's fortune came with a curse? Would you take the money or walk away? Where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Is it late enough to hear the laughter in your own shadows? We're just getting started. The Hargrove Heirs story is a descent into dread, and we'll unravel it piece by piece, through the sons' deaths, the family's desperate fight, and the echoes that linger in Blackthorn's ruins. If you're hooked, subscribe and hit the bell for more tales of cursed bloodlines. Next, we'll step into Jonathan's final night, where the laughter began, and the Hargrove legacy started to crumble. Stay with us. The sun sets over Blackthorn Manor, October 1892, casting long shadows across the oak-lined drive. The air is thick with anticipation, the kind that hums before a storm. Tonight, Jonathan Hargrove, the eldest of Elias Hargrove's 4 sons, turns 30. It's more than a birthday. It's the night he's to inherit a third of the family fortune, a sum that could buy half of Savannah. The manor is alive with light, chandeliers glittering, tables laden with roasted pheasant and crystal flutes of champagne. Guests from across Georgia, politicians, merchants, and belles in silk gowns fill the ballroom, their laughter mingling with the clink of glasses. But beneath the revelry, something stirs. A low chuckle, barely audible, weaves through the crowd, unnoticed by all but Abigail Hargrove, who clutches her shawl and stares at her son. Jonathan, radiant and unaware, is about to step into a trap no one could have foreseen. This is the night the Hargrove curse, or whatever it was, showed its face, and Blackthorn Manor would never be the same. Jonathan was the golden son, the one everyone loved. At 30, he was tall, broad-shouldered, with a smile that could charm a snake. He'd spent his youth winning hearts in Savannah's salons, brokering deals for his father's cotton empire, and dreaming of a governorship. His birthday was a spectacle, planned for months, a celebration to mark his ascension as heir. Elias Hargrove, graying but still commanding, stood at the head of the ballroom, raising a toast to his son's future. The will, sealed with black wax, waited in the library, its pages detailing land, mills, and gold, Jonathan's birthright. Guests whispered of his luck, but the sharecroppers outside, lingering in the shadows, weren't so sure. They'd heard the laughter before, not joyful but sharp like glass breaking in the soul. They knew Blackthorn's secrets even if Jonathan didn't. The evening began with music, a string quartet playing waltzes as guests swirled across the polished floor. Jonathan was everywhere, dancing with debutantes, joking with bankers, his voice carrying over the crowd. But as the clock neared midnight, the mood shifted. Abigail, stationed by the fireplace, grew pale, her eyes darting to the windows where moonlight spilled like spilled milk. She'd been restless all week, lighting candles in the chapel, murmuring prayers no one could decipher. Some said she'd visited Mavis, the conjure woman, years ago, begging for her son's safety. Now, as the hour of the will reading approached, her hands trembled, and she whispered to Elias, who brushed her off with a laugh. But his laugh faltered too, as if he sensed the air growing heavy. At midnight, the guests gathered in the library, a cavernous room lined with leather-bound books and portraits of Hargrove ancestors, their eyes seeming to follow the crowd. Elias stood at a mahogany desk, the will in his hands, his voice steady as he read Jonathan's inheritance. Thousands of acres, shares in 3 mills, and a vault of gold in Savannah's bank. Jonathan grinned, raising a glass, his charm lighting the room. But then it began, a chuckle soft at first, bubbling from his throat. The guests smiled, thinking it a jest, but the sound grew louder, sharper, a laughter that wasn't his. It rolled out of him, unstoppable, his face twisting as he clutched his chest. The glass fell, shattering on the floor. Guests gasped, some stepping back, others frozen as Jonathan's laughter turned to a howl, a sound that seemed to come from somewhere else, somewhere wrong. Abigail screamed, rushing to her son, but Elias held her back, his face ashen. Jonathan staggered, his hands clawing at his throat as if to stop the sound, but it kept coming, louder, wilder, until his eyes rolled back. He collapsed, his body hitting the floor with a thud, and the laughter stopped, replaced by a silence that choked the room. A doctor among the guests knelt beside him, checking for a pulse, but there was none. Jonathan Hargrove, heir to Blackthorn, was dead, his face locked in a grotesque grin, lips stretched wide, eyes wide with something not quite fear. No blood, no marks, no poison in his glass, just laughter that had torn him apart from the inside. The guests fled, some sobbing, others whispering of curses. Elias locked the library door, refusing to let anyone touch the body until morning. Abigail sank to her knees, her prayers now wails, as if she'd known this was coming. The sharecroppers outside, watching from the fields, weren't surprised. They'd heard the laughter before, drifting from the manor's cellars or the oaks at midnight. They spoke of Mavis, the conjure woman whose family Elias had wronged. Her curse, they said, was alive in Jonathan's death. By dawn, Savannah buzzed with rumors. Newspapers called it a tragic collapse, hinting at heart failure or drink, but the locals knew better. Blackthorn Manor was cursed, and Jonathan's death was only the beginning. The aftermath was chaos. Elias hired doctors from Atlanta, demanding answers, but autopsies found nothing. No disease, no toxins, just lungs that seemed to have burst from strain. Priests blessed the manor, their incense thick in the air, but the laughter lingered, faint and mocking, in the halls. Abigail retreated to her rooms, refusing to speak, her rosary worn smooth from constant use. The younger sons, Thomas, Samuel, and Caleb, were shaken but defiant, insisting it was a fluke, a tragedy, not a curse. Yet the manor felt different now. Maids quit, claiming the mirrors showed Jonathan's face, laughing still. The fields grew quiet, as if the land itself held its breath, waiting for the next heir to turn 30. This moment marked Blackthorn Manor as a place of dread. Jonathan's death wasn't just a loss. It was a warning, a crack in the Hargrove legacy that would widen with every birthday. The townsfolk stopped visiting, the parties ceased, and Elias's empire began to fray at the edges. But the family couldn't leave. The fortune tied them to Blackthorn, as did the whispers of something unfinished, something that demanded more. Was it Mavis's curse, her vengeance for sins buried in the fields? Or was it the land itself, poisoned by older rites, older blood. Jonathan's laughter was the first note in a song that would haunt the Hargroves for years, and we're only beginning to hear its melody. If this chills you, and it should, drop a like to let us know this story's sinking in. In the comments, tell us, what would you do if you heard that laughter at your own birthday? Would you stay for the fortune or run from the curse? Where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Is it late enough to feel the shadows watching? This tale is unraveling, and we're diving deeper into the Hargrove curse. Next, we'll follow the pattern as it claims the other sons, each death more haunting than the last. If you're hooked, subscribe and hit the bell. We're peeling back the layers of this cursed bloodline, and you won't want to miss what's coming. Picture Blackthorn now, its lights dimmed, its ballroom empty. The oaks outside sway in the wind, their branches scratching the sky like fingers reaching for answers. Somewhere in the manor, Abigail prays, her voice a whisper against the growing darkness. And somewhere, faint but unmistakable, the laughter waits for the next heir. Stay with us as we step into the years that followed, where the Hargrove sons faced their own birthdays and their own fates. The year is 1895, and Blackthorn Manor stands like a tomb under the Georgia sky, its once vibrant halls now cloaked in unease. Jonathan Hargrove's death 3 years ago left a scar on the family, his laughter echoing in the minds of those who witnessed it. The grand parties have stopped, the chandeliers dimmed, and the oak-lined drive sees only the occasional cart bringing supplies. Elias Hargrove, the patriarch, is a shadow of his former self. His empire still vast, but his eyes haunted by questions no one can answer. Abigail, his wife, has become a ghost in her own home, drifting through the corridors, her prayers a constant murmur. The remaining sons, Thomas, Samuel, and Caleb, carry on, but the manor feels like it's holding its breath. The curse, if it is a curse, isn't done. Tonight, Thomas, the second son, turns 30, and Blackthorn Manor is about to learn that Jonathan's death was no accident. It's a pattern, relentless and cruel, claiming the Hargrove heirs one by one with laughter that kills. Thomas was different from Jonathan. Where his older brother was all charm and flash, Thomas was the thinker, the scholar, with a mind sharper than the quills he wore to nubs. At 30, he was the family's hope to unravel the mystery of Blackthorn's shadow. He'd spent years in the manor's library, poring over medical texts and folklore, dismissing the townsfolk's whispers of curses as superstition. "There's a rational explanation," he'd say, his voice steady even as maids reported hearing giggles from empty rooms. But as his birthday approached, the manor grew restless. Mirrors fogged without cause, wine glasses cracked at dinner, and the oaks outside seemed to lean closer, their branches clawing at the windows. Abigail begged Thomas to refuse his inheritance, to leave Blackthorn, but he laughed, his own laugh still human, calling her fears old wives' tales. The night of Thomas's 30th birthday was quieter than Jonathan's. No grand ball, just a small gathering in the dining hall. Elias, gaunt and silent, sat at the head, the will in his hands, ready to name Thomas heir to his share of the fortune. Abigail refused to attend, locked in the chapel, her rosary clicking like a metronome. The guests, local bankers, a doctor from Atlanta, and a preacher who'd blessed the manor after Jonathan's death, kept their voices low, as if afraid to wake something. Thomas, ever the optimist, toasted to progress, to science, to breaking the silly rumors that plagued his family. But as Elias began reading the will, detailing acres and gold, the air shifted. A chuckle, soft and wrong, slipped from Thomas's lips, stopping the room cold. It wasn't his laugh. It was too sharp, too hollow, like wind rattling through bones. The guests froze, glasses halfway to their mouths, as Thomas's chuckle grew louder, wilder, his face twisting into a grin that wasn't his. He clutched the table, his knuckles white trying to speak, but the laughter drowned him out. It rolled through the dining hall, bouncing off the walls, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The doctor rushed to his side, fumbling with a stethoscope, but Thomas was beyond help. His body shook, his eyes bulged, and the laughter turned to a scream that wasn't human. He collapsed, his chair splintering under him, and when the sound stopped, so did he. His face, like Jonathan's, was frozen in a grotesque smile, lips stretched, eyes wide with something beyond pain. The preacher fled, muttering about demons. The banker dropped his glass, staining the rug red. Elias stood motionless, the will crumpled in his fist, while the doctor searched for a pulse that wasn't there. No wounds, no poison, just laughter that had torn Thomas apart from within. The manor was sealed that night, no one allowed in or out, as Elias demanded silence from the witnesses. But word spread. Savannah's papers called it another Hargrove tragedy, hinting at madness or bad blood. But the sharecroppers knew better. They gathered in the fields, whispering of Mavis, the conjure woman, whose curse seemed to strike with every inheritance. "It's the land," they said, "or what's under it." 3 years later, in 1898, it was Samuel's turn. The Nowile son, the gambler, the one who'd ridden horses through the marshes and laughed at death itself. He was 30, and Blackthorn was a husk of its former glory. Elias had aged a decade in 3 years, his hair white, his voice a rasp. Abigail was a recluse, seen only at dawn, tending the garden with trembling hands. Samuel scoffed at the curse, calling it a ghost story for fools. He'd spent his years dodging the manor, living in Savannah's taverns, but the will called him back. His inheritance was his birthright, and he wouldn't run from it. The night was small, just family and a few loyal servants, gathered in the library where Jonathan had died. The air was thick, the mirrors covered with cloth at Abigail's insistence. As Elias read the will, Samuel leaned back, a smirk on his face, a glass of bourbon in hand. But then it came, a giggle, low at first, like a child's, then louder, sharper until it consumed him. He dropped the glass, his hands clawing at his throat, his smirk twisting into that same unnatural grin. The servant screamed, one fainting as Samuel's laughter filled the room, echoing off the bookshelves, drowning out Elias's voice. He staggered to a mirror, ripping the cloth away, and froze, as if seeing something or someone, staring back. He fell, his body convulsing, and when the laughter stopped, so did his heart. The same grin, the same empty eyes, the same silence that followed. By now, the pattern was undeniable. 3 sons, 3 30th birthdays, 3 deaths by laughter. Elias locked himself in his study, refusing to speak. Abigail's prayers grew frantic, her voice hoarse from chanting. Caleb, the youngest, only 27, watched it all with an artist's eye, sketching the manor's oaks as if they held the answer. The townsfolk shunned Blackthorn, calling it cursed, haunted, unholy. Newspapers as far as Charleston ran stories, speculating on madness, poison, or something older, something tied to the land or Mavis's vengeance. The sharecroppers spoke of rituals, of blood spilled long before Elias, of a debt the Hargroves were paying, but no one could stop it. The manor was a trap, and the fortune was its bait. This pattern wasn't just tragedy, it was terror, the kind that makes you question your own blood. What linked the laughter to the inheritance? Why only the sons? And what was waiting for Caleb, the last heir, still 3 years from his fate? If this story's gripping you, and it should, drop a like to let us know. In the comments, tell us, if you were Caleb, would you stay or burn the will and run? Where are you watching from? And what time is it there? Is it dark enough to hear that chuckle in your own home? We're diving deeper into the Hargrove curse, and it's only getting darker. Subscribe and hit the bell for more tales of doomed bloodlines. Next, we'll explore the family's desperate attempts to break the curse, as doctors, priests, and secrets collide. Stay with us. Picture Blackthorn now, its windows dark, its fields overgrown. The oaks stand like sentinels, their roots deep in secrets. Somewhere Abigail's prayers echo, and somewhere that laughter waits, patient and hungry. The Hargrove legacy is crumbling, and Caleb's time is coming. It's 1901, and Blackthorn Manor looms like a wound in the Georgia Lowcountry, its once proud columns stained with neglect. The laughter that claimed Jonathan, Thomas, and Samuel has turned the Hargrove name into a whispered curse across Savannah. Elias Hargrove, the patriarch who built an empire from cotton and shadows, is a broken man, his wealth powerless against the deaths of his sons. Abigail, his wife, is a specter, her days spent in the manor's chapel, Her prayers now pleas for mercy. Caleb, the youngest son, is 28, his artist's hands trembling as he sketches the oaks, as if their twisted branches might reveal why his brothers died laughing on their 30th birthdays. The manor is a prison, its halls heavy with dread, and the Hargrove fortune, once a promise of immortality, is now a death sentence. Desperate to save Caleb, the family turns to doctors, spiritualists, and detectives, chasing answers to a curse that defies reason. But every step deeper into Blackthorn's secrets only tightens the noose. Elias refused to believe in curses, at least at first. After Samuel's death in 1898, he summoned experts to Blackthorn, determined to find a cause, any cause, that wasn't supernatural. A team of doctors from Atlanta arrived, their bags heavy with stethoscopes and vials, poring over autopsy reports that offered no answers. Jonathan's lungs were shredded, as if he'd breathed fire. Thomas's heart had burst. Samuel's throat showed no marks, yet his face was locked in that grotesque grin. No poison, no disease, no explanation, just laughter that killed. The doctors tested the manor's water, the wine, even the air, suspecting toxins or mold. They found nothing but dust and the faint scent of decay, as if Blackthorn itself was rotting from within. One physician, Dr. Amos Carver, stayed longer, obsessed, scribbling notes about hysterical convulsions, until he fled one night, claiming he'd heard laughter from his own reflection. Abigail, meanwhile, turned to faith. She'd always been devout, but now her prayers were feverish, her chapel a fortress of candles and rosaries. She invited Father Benedict, a priest from Charleston known for battling unclean spirits, to bless the manor. He walked its halls, sprinkling holy water, chanting in Latin, but the air grew heavier, the mirrors clouding as he passed. During one ritual, a candelabrum fell, nearly crushing him, and he swore he heard a chuckle, not from the family, but from the walls. Abigail confided in him about Mavis, the conjure woman, whose curse was whispered in the fields. Father Benedict urged her to find Mavis's kin, to beg forgiveness, but Mavis had vanished after her clash with Elias, her cabin burned to ash. The priest left, warning that Blackthorn was beyond God's reach. Elias, desperate for control, hired Pinkerton detectives, men known for cracking cases no one else could touch. They arrived in 1899, their notebooks filled with questions about enemies, debts, and the manor's history. They interviewed sharecroppers who spoke reluctantly of Mavis's curse and older tales, of a Gula ritual site beneath Blackthorn's fields, where blood sacrifices had once fed the earth. The detectives dug into Elias's past, uncovering whispers of smuggling, of men who'd crossed him and disappeared. One found a journal in the library, its pages brittle, written by a Hargrove ancestor in 1790. It described a pact with the land for wealth, sealed with what the roots demanded. The detective who found it quit the next day, refusing to return, his report ending with a single line: "The laughter isn't human. Caleb, caught in the middle, tried to help." His sketches, once of oaks and sunsets, now showed faces: Jonathan, Thomas, Samuel, their grins unnaturally wide. He claimed he didn't draw them consciously, as if his hands moved on their own. He pored over the journal the detective had found, its cryptic words haunting him. The fortune feeds, and the heirs pay. He begged Elias to sell Blackthorn, to burn the will, but Elias refused, his pride stronger than his fear. "This is our legacy," he'd growl, though his voice shook. Caleb visited Savannah's libraries, seeking answers in folklore. He found tales of curses tied to bloodlines, of spirits that laughed to claim their due. One night, he woke screaming, claiming he'd dreamed of his brothers, their faces merged, laughing as one. Abigail took her own measures, desperate to save her last son. She tracked down a Gullah healer, a woman named Zora, said to be Mavis's niece. Zora came to Blackthorn under cover of night, her bag heavy with herbs and bones. She walked the fields, chanting in a tongue no one understood, her eyes fixed on the oaks. She told Abigail the land was hungry, that Elias's greed had woken something older than the Hargroves. "Blood for blood," she said, offering a ritual to appease it, a sacrifice of livestock, not men. Abigail agreed, and they slit a goat's throat under the largest oak, its blood soaking the roots. For a week the manor was quiet, the laughter gone. But on the 7th night it returned, louder, as if mocking their effort. The family's desperation grew frantic. Elias hired a chemist to test the manor's soil, suspecting a gas that drove men mad. The results were normal, but the chemist noted an oddity. The soil under the oaks was too fertile, as if fed by something richer than decay. Spiritualist Madame Leclerc arrived from New Orleans, claiming she could commune with the dead. During a séance in the ballroom, she screamed, her eyes rolling back and fled, babbling about too many voices, all laughing. Even the servants, loyal for years, began to leave, whispering of mirrors that showed their own faces grinning back, unbidden. Blackthorn was unraveling, and Caleb's 30th birthday was looming, only 2 years away. The investigations revealed fragments but no answers. Was it Mavis's curse? Her vengeance for Elias's sins against her kin? A chemical taint, hidden in the manor's walls or the oak's roots? Or something older tied to the journals packed with the land? The Hargroves were running out of time, and Caleb, the last heir, was caught in a web of fear and defiance. If this story's tightening its grip on you, and it should, drop a like to let us know. In the comments, tell us, if you were Caleb, would you trust science, faith, or the old ways to save yourself? Where are you watching from? And what time is it there? Is it late enough to feel the laughter creeping closer? We're plunging deeper into the Hargrove curse, and it's only getting darker. Subscribe and hit the bell for more doomed bloodlines. Picture Blackthorn now. Its halls silent but for Abigail's prayers and Caleb's restless pacing. The oaks outside sway, their shadows stretching like fingers. Somewhere the laughter waits, patient, inevitable. Next, we'll face Caleb's final stand, as the last son defies the curse and pays the price. It's 1904, and Blackthorn Manor stands as a husk of its former glory. Its white columns cracked, its fields choked with weeds. The Hargrove family is a shadow, broken by the laughter that claimed Jonathan in 1892, Thomas in 1895, and Samuel in 1898, each son dead on his 30th birthday, their faces frozen in grotesque grins. Elias Hargrove, once a titan of Georgia's low country, is now a recluse, his empire crumbling under the weight of grief. Abigail, his wife, is a wraith, her prayers unanswered, her eyes hollow from years of fighting a curse no one can name. Caleb, the youngest son, is 30 tonight, the last heir to the Hargrove fortune. Unlike his brothers, he knows what's coming. He's seen the pattern, felt the manor's pulse, heard the whispers in the oaks. Tonight, in the heart of Blackthorn, Caleb will defy the curse, or become its final victim. The air is thick with dread and the laughter is waiting. Caleb was always different. The artist of the family, his sketches captured Blackthorn's beauty and its terror. Oaks that seemed to watch, mirrors that held faces not his own. At 28, after Samuel's death, he'd become obsessed, filling notebooks with theories about the curse. He read the old journal found by the Pinkerton detective, its cryptic words about a pact with the land, haunting him. He scoured Savannah's archives, finding tales of gullah rituals and blood debts tied to Blackthorn's soil. Unlike Jonathan's charm or Thomas's logic, Caleb's weapon was imagination, a belief he could outwit whatever claimed his brothers. "I won't take the fortune," he vowed, burning his copy of the will in the manor's fireplace. But Blackthorn didn't care about his defiance. The curse was in the blood, not the paper. The night of Caleb's 30th birthday was no celebration. The manor was nearly empty, its staff long gone, driven out by cracked mirrors and phantom giggles. Elias insisted on reading the will, clinging to tradition, his voice a rasp as he summoned Caleb to the library, the same room where Jonathan fell. Abigail refused to come, locked in the chapel, her rosary beads snapping from overuse. Only a handful gathered, a loyal butler, a local doctor who'd studied the brothers' deaths, and a gullah healer named Zora, who'd returned at Caleb's plea. The library was dim, lit by flickering candles, the portraits of Hargrove ancestors staring down, their eyes cold. Caleb stood by the window, his latest sketch, a twisted oak with laughing faces in its bark, clutched in his hand. "I renounce it," he said before Elias could speak. "The fortune, the land, all of it." Elias, frail and trembling, ignored him, opening the will. "You are my son," he said, "and this is your birthright." As he read, acres, mills, gold. The air grew heavy, the candles sputtering. Caleb clenched his fists, shouting, "I won't be next." But then it began. A chuckle, soft like a child's, rising from his throat. The butler dropped his tray. The doctor backed away, and Zora whispered a prayer in her native tongue. Caleb's chuckle turned to laughter, sharp and wrong, his face twisting into the same grin that had claimed his brother's. He stumbled to a mirror, one he'd demanded uncovered, and stared, his eyes wide with terror. "It's not me," he gasped between bursts of laughter. As if something else looked back, Zora tried to intervene, scattering herbs and chanting, but the laughter drowned her out. It filled the library, echoing off the bookshelves, a sound that seemed to claw at the walls. Caleb's hands tore at his throat, his sketch falling to the floor, the oak's faces seeming to laugh with him. Elias, frozen, dropped the will, its pages scattering like leaves. The doctor fumbled with a syringe, hoping to sedate him, but Caleb collapsed before the needle touched him, his body writhing, his laughter now a scream that wasn't human. When it stopped, so did he. His face, like Jonathan's, Thomas's, and Samuel's, was locked in a grotesque grin, lips stretched, eyes staring at something beyond the room. The doctor checked his pulse, nothing. Caleb Hargrove, the last heir, was gone. The library was silent, save for Abigail's distant wails, carried from the chapel. Elias fell to his knees, his empire meaningless, his sons lost. Zora gathered her herbs, muttering, "The land took what it was owed." She left that night, never returning. The doctor, shaken, wrote a report claiming acute hysteria, but he burned it days later, unable to explain the laughter's source. The butler fled, telling Savannah's taverns of a manor cursed beyond saving. Blackthorn was abandoned soon after, its gates locked, its fields left to rot. Elias died a year later, alone, some say hearing laughter in his final breath. Abigail lingered, a ghost in the manor, until she vanished in 1906, her body never found. Some say she joined Mavis, the conjure woman, in the marshes, seeking forgiveness that never came. Caleb's defiance had been his undoing. He'd burned the will, rejected the fortune, but the curse didn't need paper. It was in the blood, in the land, in the oaks that stood like sentinels. Savannah's newspapers called it the final Hargrove tragedy, but the sharecroppers knew it was more. They spoke of Mavis's curse, of a debt Elias paid with his sons' lives. Others whispered of older rites, of a ground that demanded blood for wealth, a pact sealed before the Hargroves ever arrived. Caleb's sketches, found scattered in the library, were burned by the town, too eerie to keep. But one survived, hidden in a Savannah archive, showing an oak with faces, Jonathan, Thomas, Samuel, and Caleb, laughing as one. This was the climax of the Hargrove curse, the moment the family's legacy crumbled. But the questions linger, sharp as ever. What drove the laughter? Was it vengeance, madness, or something buried in Blackthorn's soil? If this story's clawing at you, and it should, drop a like to let us know. In the comments, tell us, if you were Caleb, would you have faced the curse or fled Blackthorn forever? Where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Is it late enough to hear that laughter in your own shadows? We're nearing the end of this tale, but the mystery isn't solved. Subscribe and hit the bell for more cursed bloodlines. Next, we'll unravel the theories behind the laughter and the secrets Blackthorn still hides. Picture Blackthorn now. Its doors barred, its windows dark. The oaks stand silent, but the air carries a chuckle, faint and mocking. The Hargrove line is broken, but the curse might not be. Stay with us as we dig into the final pieces of this haunting puzzle. It's 1904, and Blackthorn Manor stands abandoned, a skeletal relic in the Georgia Lowcountry. Its fields swallowed by weeds, its oaks looming like mourners. The Hargrove family is gone. Jonathan, Thomas, Samuel, and Caleb, each struck down by laughter on their 30th birthdays, their faces locked in grotesque grins. Elias, the patriarch, died a year later, his empire worthless. Abigail vanished, leaving only whispers of her prayers. The manor's gates are locked, but its secrets linger, carried by Savannah's winds and the tales of sharecroppers who still avoid the land. What killed the Hargrove heirs? Was it a conjure woman's curse, a poison in the soil, or a debt older than the family itself? Tonight, we peel back the layers of this mystery, sifting through theories, clues, and the chilling truths Blackthorn hides. The laughter may have stopped, but its echo demands answers. The first theory points to Mavis, the conjure woman whose name haunts Blackthorn's history. Sharecroppers swore she cursed Elias Hargrove after he wronged her kin. Some say by cheating them out of land, others by burning their homes to expand his fields. Her words, "Your blood will pay," were whispered long after she vanished. Gula traditions, rooted in the Low Country's enslaved communities, speak of curses that bind bloodlines, tying death to a specific moment, like an heir's inheritance. Mavis's kin practiced rituals blending African spirituality with local lore, and some believe she wove a hex into the Hargrove blood, triggered when each son claimed his fortune. The laughter, they say, was her vengeance, a sound not of joy but of justice tearing through the airs like a blade. Yet no trace of Mavis was found after 1875, and her cabin's ashes held no clues, only a charred bone, rumored to be human, buried where the oaks grew thickest. Another theory looks to science, though it falters under Blackthorn's shadow. Doctors who examined the Hargrove sons found no poison, no disease, only lungs torn and hearts burst, as if the laughter itself was a weapon. Dr. Amos Carver, the Atlanta physician who fled the manor, proposed hysterical convulsions, a rare condition where stress triggers fatal seizures. But why only the sons and only at 30? Some speculated a toxin in Blackthorn's soil or water, perhaps a hallucinogen from the marshes, absorbed over years. The chemist who tested the ground found it unnaturally fertile, as if fed by something richer than decay. Blood, perhaps, or something older. Yet tests showed nothing, and the laughter's precision, striking at the moment of inheritance, defied any natural cause. Science offered questions, not answers. A darker theory ties the curse to the land itself, to a history predating the Hargroves. The Pinkerton Detective's Journal, found in 1899, hinted at a pact with the land, made by a Hargrove ancestor in 1790, trading blood for wealth. Sharecroppers spoke of a Gula ritual site beneath Blackthorn's fields, where sacrifices, animal or otherwise, fed the earth for prosperity. The oaks, they said, weren't just trees. Their roots drank deep, tangled with bones no one dared unearth. Some believed the laughter was the land's voice claiming what was owed. When Zora, the Gullah healer, performed her ritual in 1901, spilling goat's blood under the oaks, the laughter paused, then returned, as if the land demanded more. Could Blackthorn itself be alive, its hunger tied to the fortune Elias built? Then there's the psychological angle, though it feels thin against the manor's weight. Could the Hargrove sons have been driven mad by their father's ambition, their mother's fear, or the whispers of a cursed legacy? Caleb's sketches, showing his brothers' faces merged in laughing oaks, suggest a mind unraveling. Yet the consistency of their deaths, each at 30, each laughing until collapse, points to something beyond madness. Some speculated a shared delusion, amplified by the manor's isolation. But the guests who heard the laughter, the servants who saw grinning reflections, weren't Hargroves. The curse, if it was one, reached beyond the family, as if Blackthorn itself was a trap for anyone who lingered. Clues scattered through the manor offer tantalizing hints. The journal, with its talk of a pact, mentioned roots that feed on what is given. A cracked mirror in the library, untouched since Jonathan's death, was said to show faces not your own. Caleb's final sketch, hidden in a Savannah archive, depicts an oak with his brother's grins, and some swear it includes a fifth face, Elias perhaps, or something else. Sharecroppers reported laughter from the fields long before Jonathan's death, as if the curse was waiting. And then there's the soil, too rich, too red, as if Blackthorn's oaks grew fat on more than rain. These fragments form a puzzle, but no piece completes it. Was it Mavis's hex, a toxin, a living land, or a family driven to ruin by its own guilt? The truth, if it exists, lies buried in Blackthorn's ruins. After Caleb's death, the manor was abandoned, its gates chained, its windows boarded. Yet stories persist. In 1910, a trespasser claimed he heard laughter from the oaks, sharp and mocking. In 1953, a Savannah historian found a child's shoe under the manor's floorboards, its laces knotted with strange symbols. As late as 2025, hikers report giggles in the marshes, too clear to be wind. Blackthorn doesn't let go. The Hargrove fortune, once a beacon, is gone, scattered by creditors. But the curse, or whatever it was, feels alive, waiting for someone new to claim the land. What do you think? Was it a conjure woman's vengeance, a poisoned earth, or a debt older than the Hargroves? If this story's sinking its claws into you, drop a like to let us know. In the comments, tell us, which theory chills you most, curse, science, or the land itself? Would you dare visit Blackthorn's ruins? Where are you watching from and what time is it there? Is it late enough to hear that laughter in your own shadows? We're almost at the end of this tale, but the echoes linger. Subscribe and hit the bell for more cursed bloodlines. Next, we'll explore the modern hauntings of Blackthorn and the legacy that refuses to die. Picture the manor now, its walls crumbling, its oaks standing guard. The laughter is silent, but the air feels wrong, as if Blackthorn is watching, waiting for its next heir. Stay with us for the final chapter. It's 2025, and Blackthorn Manor is a ruin, its columns choked by vines, its fields a tangle of thorns. The Hargrove family is gone. Jonathan, Thomas, Samuel, and Caleb, each claimed by laughter on their 30th birthdays. Their deaths in 1892, 1895, 1898, and 1904 a grim rhythm. Elias and Abigail followed, lost to grief and mystery. The fortune that built an empire is scattered, but Blackthorn's curse lingers, its story whispered in Savannah's bars and beyond. Hikers avoid the marshes, swearing they hear giggles in the wind, sharp, unnatural, like the laughter that killed the heirs. Tonight we close the Hargrove saga, tracing its echoes into the present and the haunting question: is the curse still alive, waiting for a new heir to claim the land? The manor was abandoned after Caleb's death, its gates chained, but Blackthorn doesn't rest. In 1915, a surveyor reported laughter from the oaks, fleeing when his tools vanished. In 1978, a teenager camping nearby recorded a chuckle on his cassette player. The tape later found blank except for a faint giggle. By 2025, urban explorers post videos online, claiming shadows in the manor's windows form grinning faces. Locals speak of a 2019 incident. A developer planning to bulldoze Blackthorn disappeared, his car found empty, a smile scratched into the dashboard. The oaks, still standing, are said to whisper at midnight, their roots deep in soil too red, too rich, as if fed by something more than time. What's left of the Hargroves? No heirs remain, but their story lives in Savannah's archives. A journal hinting at a pact with the land, Caleb's sketch of laughing oaks, a child's shoe with knotted symbols. Some say the curse was Mavis's vengeance, her gula hex still binding the bloodline. Others blame the land, a hungry thing demanding payment for Elias's wealth. A few whisper of descendants, hidden, watching, afraid to claim Blackthorn. The laughter, real or imagined, keeps the manor untouched, a monument to a debt unpaid. This tale haunts because it's unfinished. Could you walk Blackthorn's fields knowing what happened? Drop a like if this chilled you. Comment. Do you believe the curse lives, or is it just a story? Where are you watching from and what time is it? Is it late enough to hear giggles in your shadows? Subscribe for more cursed tales. This is just one bloodline. Check our playlist for the triplets who burned their masters or the midwives who delivered the damned. Blackthorn stands, silent, but watching. The oaks sway and the laughter waits. Thanks for joining us. Sleep lightly.